No one could point to a moment when everything changed. They only knew she was gone and the search had started to stall. Helena Monroe is asked to take a fresh look, listening for the small contradictions and missed details that can hide in plain sight. A Normal Family. A story by 10 Chapters Studio. Chapter 1. What was missing? The first thing Helena Monroe noticed was how ordinary everything felt. The street was lined with identical houses, 2 stories, neutral siding, trimmed hedges still holding on to winter's discipline. Nothing about the place suggested urgency. No police tape, no reporters, just a recycling bin tipped slightly onto its side, as if someone had meant to fix it and never got around to it. Helena parked across the street and sat for a moment, engine off, hands resting loosely on the wheel. Missing person cases often announce themselves with chaos. This one hadn't. That, more than anything else, explained why she was here. The girl, Emily Rowe, 16, had been gone for 11 days. No witnesses, no signs of forced entry, no messages that clearly pointed one way or another. The police file was thin in the way that suggested early confidence rather than neglect. Most of the initial assumptions had already been made. Runaway, maybe. Accident, less likely, but not impossible. Mental health concerns had been mentioned, then quietly set aside. There was nothing solid enough to hold on to. Helena stepped out of the car and felt the late afternoon air settle around her. Cool, still. She walked toward the house, noting the details she always did without thinking: the angle of the front windows, the condition of the porch steps, the absence of anything hastily rearranged. Someone still lived here. Someone was still trying to keep things normal. The door opened before she could knock. Laura Rowe stood framed in the doorway, her expression polite, careful, already tired. She looked like a woman who had learned to answer questions without inviting more. "You must be Helena Monroe." Helena nodded. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course." Laura stepped aside. "Please, come in." The house smelled faintly of cleaning products and something sweet, baked goods maybe, or an attempt at them. The living room was neat without being sterile. Family photos lined the mantel, graduation smiles, beach trips. Emily appeared in several of them, always standing slightly apart, her smile more tentative than the others. Helena didn't linger on the photos. People noticed when you did. Laura gestured toward the sofa. "My husband will be home soon. He didn't want you to think he was avoiding this." "I understand," Helena said, sitting. "I'm just here to get a sense of things, nothing formal." Laura nodded quickly, relief flickering across her face. "Of course, whatever helps." They talked first about logistics. The day Emily was last seen, school dismissal, a friend she'd waved to but not stopped for, the backpack she hadn't taken with her. Laura's voice stayed steady, practiced. She corrected herself once or twice, but only on small details, time estimates, which entrance Emily usually used. "Did anything seem off that morning?" Helena asked gently. Laura hesitated, just long enough to be human. "No," she said. "That's the hardest part. If there had been something, I'd be clinging to it." Helena nodded, though something in her tightened. Not alarm, not suspicion, just a sense of smoothness, like a story told too often to too many people. "Would you mind if I see Emily's room?" Helena asked. "Of course not." Laura stood immediately. "It's just upstairs." The bedroom was exactly what Helena expected. Clean, orderly, frozen in place. The bed was made. The desk was tidy. Posters hung slightly crooked, as if adjusted once and never touched again. Nothing felt disturbed. Nothing felt abandoned either. Helena stood in the doorway and let herself take it in. Sometimes her instincts arrived as flashes, images, sensations she didn't trust enough to name. This time it was quieter, a faint pressure behind her eyes, a sense of absence that had nothing to do with missing objects. "Is there anything you think we've overlooked?" Helena asked. Laura followed her gaze around the room. "I don't think so," she said softly. "Everyone says she was happy. Quiet, but happy." Helena nodded again. Quiet, she thought, was not the same thing. As they left the room, Helena noticed something small she hadn't expected to matter. The light switch by the door was worn smooth, more than the others in the hallway, used often, habitually. She filed the detail away without knowing why. Downstairs, the front door opened, and a man's voice carried in from the hall. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. "Traffic." Laura turned toward him. "This is Helena." Helena rose, extending her hand, already listening, not to what would be said next, but to how easily everyone slipped back into place. Nothing here was wrong yet, and that, she knew, was exactly what made the case dangerous. Chapter 2. The Shape of a Day. The school looked smaller than Helena expected. Not physically. Its brick facade still stretched across the block, windows catching the flat winter light, but emotionally, as if the building had folded in on itself since Emily Rowe disappeared. The parking lot was half full. A banner for spring tryouts hung crooked above the entrance, its cheer dulled by weeks of wind. Inside, the halls hummed with low noise, lockers slammed, shoes scuffed. Life went on in the specific, indifferent way only teenagers could manage. The vice principal met Helena near the office, Mark Jensen, late 40s, earnest in the way of men who believed strongly in structure. "We've cooperated fully," he said as they walked, provided attendance records, schedules, peer lists. There were no disciplinary issues. Emily wasn't flagged for anything. "No concerns at all?" Helena asked. "None that rose to reporting thresholds," he said carefully. She was quiet, reliable. Teachers liked her. Helena had heard that word again. They stopped outside a guidance office. Inside, a counselor sat with a student, voice lowered, door half closed. Jensen glanced at it, then away. "She didn't come here often," he added. "Once or twice last semester. Normal check-ins." Normal. Helena nodded, making a mental note of how often people reached for that word when they wanted certainty. Emily's locker was at the end of a row near the science wing. A photo had been taped to it, a candid shot, slightly blurred. Someone had written "Come home" in blue marker beneath it, fresh. The marker still smelled faintly of plastic. "Their friends did that," Jensen said. "They've been taking turns." Helena crouched slightly, scanning the locker vents, the scuffed paint around the handle. No forced entry, no notes slipped inside. "Who was she closest to?" Helena asked. He hesitated. There wasn't one person. She moved between groups. That phrasing caught Helena's attention. She stood, turning toward him. "Moved how?" "Lunch, mostly," he said. "Different tables. Drama kids one day, debate team another. No trouble there. Some students just float." Floating meant adaptable or invisible. They spoke next to two girls from Emily's English class, both 16, both nervous in the way of teenagers being asked to remember something they feared remembering wrong. "She wasn't upset," one said quickly. "I mean, she didn't seem like it." "She'd been tired," the other added, "but everyone is." Helena listened more to what followed than what came first. "She didn't talk much about home," the first girl said after a pause. "Not like other people do." "Did she talk about anything?" Helena asked. The girls exchanged a look. "School," one said. "Stuff we had to do, deadlines." She was really organized. Organised came up again when Helena spoke to a boy from Emily's chemistry lab. He described her as dependable, prepared, someone who always did her part. She hated group work, though, he added, almost as an afterthought. Why? Helena asked. He shrugged. She didn't hate it, she just got tense, like she didn't want to mess it up. The bell rang then, sharp and sudden. Students poured into the hall, the moment dissolving into noise. Helena stepped aside, watching faces blur past her. In motion, no one looked particularly unhappy, no one looked afraid. In a quiet office off the main corridor, Helena reviewed Emily's attendance records. Perfect, not a single unexplained absence in months. Homework submissions logged to the minute. She was very responsible, the guidance counselor said, almost proudly. Sometimes kids like that put too much pressure on themselves. Did she ever talk about leaving? Helena asked. The counselor frowned. No, she talked about getting through things. That's different. Helena left the school just as the late afternoon light began to fade. Outside, students clustered on the steps, laughing too loudly, phones already out. Across the street, a bus idled. Helena watched as a girl boarded, same height as Emily, similar hair. For a split second, her body reacted before her mind could catch up. A tightening, a false recognition. She looked away, annoyed at herself. Back in her car, Helena dictated notes into her recorder. Names, impressions, small contradictions that weren't contradictions yet. Then she paused. Emily hadn't skipped school. She hadn't acted impulsively. She hadn't confided distress or planned escape. What she had done, consistently, was show up. Helena started the engine, unsettled by the thought. People who vanish without leaving a trace rarely do so on a whim, and people who spend their lives making themselves easy to account for don't disappear by accident. As she pulled away from the curb, her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. You should talk to the girl she sat with at lunch on Thursdays. No name, no explanation, just that. Helena stared at the screen, the hum of the engine suddenly too loud in the quiet car. Thursday, she thought, and wondered why no one had mentioned it before. Chapter 3. Thursdays. The cafeteria smelled like disinfectant and reheated food, a sour-sweet mix that lingered in the back of Helena's throat. Lunch hour was already thinning out when she arrived, students drifting away in loose clusters, their conversations breaking apart as they moved. She scanned the room before approaching anyone. Where people sat, who lingered, who didn't. The girl the message had pointed her towards sat alone at the end of a long table near the windows, early 20s maybe. No, younger. 16, but with the posture of someone used to taking up as little space as possible. She had her backpack looped around one ankle as if it might wander off without her. "You're Mara?" Helena asked gently. The girl looked up too fast. "Yes." "I'm Helena Monroe. I was hoping we could talk for a minute." Mara nodded immediately, too immediately. She gathered her things even though Helena hadn't asked her to move. They sat in a quiet corner near the vending machines. The hum of refrigeration filled the pauses between words. "You sat with Emily on Thursdays," Helena said, not as a question. Mara's mouth tightened. "Sometimes." "Why Thursdays?" Mara shrugged, then stopped halfway through the motion, like she'd changed her mind mid-answer. "It just worked out." Helena waited. "Everyone else had clubs. She didn't." "Did you?" Helena asked. "No." The answer came too quickly. Helena softened her voice. "Tell me about Emily." Mara looked down at her hands. Her nails were bitten short, the skin around them raw. "She was nice, not loud. She listened." A pause. "She remembered things." "About you?" Mara nodded. "About everyone." Helena made a note of that. Remembering could be a form of care, or a habit learned for survival. "What did you talk about?" Helena asked. "Homework, mostly." Another pause. "Sometimes nothing." Nothing, Helena knew, was rarely nothing. "Did she ever seem upset?" Helena pressed. Mara hesitated this time. Not long, just long enough to matter. "She got quiet sometimes," she said, "but she was always quiet." "Quieter than usual," Helena suggested. Mara swallowed. "Maybe." They sat in silence for a few seconds. Students passed by without looking at them. "Did Emily ever say she wanted to leave?" Helena asked. Mara shook her head. "No. She talked about getting through the year, about not falling behind." "What about home?" Helena asked casually. Mara's eyes flicked up, then away. "She didn't complain." "That's not what I asked." Mara's breath caught. "She said her parents worried a lot." Helena let that sit without comment. "Did she ever skip lunch?" Helena asked. "No." Then quieter. "She never skipped anything." That echoed something Helena had already felt, but hadn't named yet. "What happened the last Thursday you saw her?" Helena asked. Mara closed her eyes briefly, like she was bracing herself. "She was late," she said. "Just a few minutes. She said she had to finish something." "Finish what?" "I don't know." Mara rubbed her thumb against her palm. "She kept checking the clock." "And then?" "And then she ate like normal." A pause. "But she didn't stay the whole time." "Did she say where she was going?" "No." "Did that bother you?" Mara shook her head again, but this time the motion was smaller, less certain. "She left her bag," suddenly Mara said. Helena looked up. "Her backpack?" "No, just her lunch bag. She came back for it later." "When?" "I don't know. I was already gone." Helena felt a faint tightening behind her eyes. Not a vision, just pressure. "You didn't see her leave the second time," Helena said. Mara nodded. "No." "Did anyone else?" "I don't think so." Helena thanked her and stood. As she did, Mara spoke again, almost too softly to hear. "She asked me something that day." "What?" Helena said, turning back. "If it ever felt easier to disappear than to explain things." Helena held her gaze. "What did you say?" Mara looked down. "I said people notice eventually." "And?" And she smiled, like that was the problem. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds pressing low. Helena walked slowly toward her car, replaying the conversation in her mind. Emily hadn't confided a plan. She hadn't asked for help. She'd asked a question. That was different. Helena reached into her pocket for her keys and froze. A folded piece of paper had been tucked under her windshield wiper. No envelope, no name. Just 3 words, written neatly in blue ink. She wasn't late. Helena stood there as the wind lifted the paper slightly, her pulse steady but alert. Late, she thought, was a matter of perspective, and wondered who had decided to correct the record. Chapter 4. On Time. Helena didn't move the paper at first. She wasn't late. The handwriting was careful, almost formal, no flourish, no rush. Whoever had left it wanted to be understood, not noticed. Helena slid the note into her pocket and drove. At the precinct, the detective assigned to the case, Walsh, met her with a look that was polite but guarded, mid-30s, smart, tired in the way of someone managing too many open ends. "You get many anonymous tips?" he asked when she showed him the note. "Enough to know when someone wants attention," Helena said. "This one wants accuracy." Walsh frowned. "Late to what?" "Lunch," Helena said, "according to one student." He exhaled. "That's thin." "So is the rest of it," Helena said evenly. They pulled up hallway footage from the school, grainy, fixed angles, the usual blind spots. Walsh fast-forwarded, stopping near the bell. "There," he said, "that's Emily." Helena leaned in. Emily moved through the corridor with her head down, pace steady, not rushed, not distracted. "Timestamp?" Helena asked. Walsh checked. 1 minute before the bell. "On time," Helena said. Walsh rewound and played it again. Emily paused near a doorway, room 214. The camera didn't capture inside. "What's in there?" "Study hall, used for makeup work, independent stuff." "Who supervises it?" Walsh checked his notes. "Rotates, sometimes no one if it's between periods." Emily disappeared into the room. She didn't come out before the bell rang. Walsh scrubbed forward. Students flooded the hall. The doorway stayed empty. "She could have left another way," he said. "Or stayed," Helena said. Walsh glanced at her. "You think she skipped lunch?" "I think she was where she meant to be," Helena replied. They pulled attendance logs next. Emily was marked present for all morning classes. Afternoon attendance showed her absent in 4th period. "She never made it back," Walsh said. "No," Helena agreed. "She never left." Walsh leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "We assumed she walked off campus. There's a gate near the art wing." "Did anyone see her?" Helena asked. "No." "Did anyone see her not leave?" Helena asked. He didn't answer. Later, Helena returned to the school alone. The halls were quieter now, custodial carts rattling softly, fluorescent lights humming. Room 214 was unlocked. Inside, the desks were arranged in rows, impersonal. A whiteboard listed reminders from weeks ago, deadlines already passed. Helena stood near the doorway, letting the space settle. Sometimes her instincts arrived as images. This time it was orientation, a sense of waiting, not anxiety, but compliance, as if time itself had slowed here, politely. She noticed the clock on the wall. Its battery had died, the hands frozen at 12:17. Helena checked her watch. Lunch bell, 12:15. She stepped closer. On one desk, faint pencil impressions remained, pressure marks without graphite. Someone had pressed hard, then erased. Helena ran her fingers lightly over the surface. A pattern emerged. Repetition. Lines traced, corrected, traced again. Perfectionism, she thought, was rarely excellence. It was about fear. Her phone buzzed. Walsh. "We found her lunch bag, lost and found, tagged Friday." Friday was 2 days after Emily disappeared. "Where was it found?" Helena asked when he answered. "Near the gym," he said. "Nothing unusual inside." "Who turned it in?" A pause. No name. Helena looked back at the desk, the frozen clock, the erased marks. Someone had corrected the timeline once already, and someone else had waited days to return what Emily came back for. Helena turned off the classroom light and closed the door behind her. On time, she thought, was a decision, and someone had made it for Emily. Chapter 5. Who Noticed? The neighbourhood moved at a predictable pace. Helena learned that quickly, walking the same loop Emily Rowe would have taken home from school. Sidewalks swept clean, lawns edged with care. People nodded without stopping, eyes flicking briefly to her face, then away, courtesy without curiosity. She started with the corner cafe, mid-afternoon lull. A bell chimed as she entered, the smell of coffee and toasted bread lingering in the air. The barista, early 20s, sharp eyeliner, practiced smile, recognized the name immediately. "Emily," she said. "Yeah, she came in sometimes, not every day." When she did, Helena asked, was it routine? The barista tilted her head. She liked the window seat, ordered hot chocolate even when it wasn't cold. Did she come alone? Mostly. A pause. Sometimes she waited. For someone specific. The barista shrugged. She didn't say, she just waited. Helena wrote that down. Outside, a man with a golden retriever slowed when Helena introduced herself. He was retired, he said, walked the same route every afternoon at the same time. I saw her the week before she went missing, he said. Doing what? Standing at the bus stop. He frowned. Not the one she usually used. Did you see her get on? No, he said. Bus came, she stepped back. Why? He didn't ask. He hesitated. She looked like she was thinking. Helena thanked him and continued. At the small grocery near the park, the cashier remembered Emily clearly. She counted her change twice, she said, always exact, never short. Did she seem nervous? The cashier shook her head, focused, like she was following rules no one else could see. By the time Helena reached the park, the light had begun to soften. The benches were damp, the paths scattered with last year's leaves. She stood near the swings, watching a group of kids orbit each other in loose, chaotic play. Emily had passed through here, Helena knew, not every day, but enough that people recognized her without really knowing her. That was the pattern emerging, not invisibility, but partial presence. Helena sat on a bench and listened. Wind in branches, distant traffic, the rhythmic creak of chains. Sometimes her instincts announced themselves. This time they didn't. What she felt instead was a kind of negative space, a map of where attention thinned. Her phone buzzed. Detective Walsh. We've had a few more calls, nothing solid. People remembering things now that they're being asked. Helena typed back. Anything inconsistent? A moment passed. Depends how you look at it, Walsh replied. Helena stood and headed back toward her car. On the way, a woman watering her front garden looked up and said, You're asking about the girl. Helena stopped. Yes? She walked past here every day, the woman said. Always waved. Did you see her the day she disappeared? The woman hesitated, then nodded. I think so. What time? After school. She frowned. Or maybe earlier. I'm not sure. Did she stop? No. Another pause. She slowed. Helena waited. Like she wanted to say something, the woman finished. Then she didn't. Helena thanked her and returned to the car, the pattern tightening just enough to feel. Emily hadn't been hiding. She'd been moving through the world carefully, adjusting herself to it, showing up where expected, pausing where not. People remembered her now because they were being asked to, but memory, Helena knew, had a way of arranging itself to fit a story already forming. She drove away as the streetlights flickered on, thinking of the bus stop, the window seat, the exact change. Waiting, she thought, was an action, and Emily had been doing a lot of it. When Helena reached home, she found an email waiting in her inbox. No subject line, no name, just an attachment. A scanned copy of a school schedule, Emily's, annotated in the margins with small, precise notes, times circled, locations adjusted, and one handwritten line at the bottom. Not all routines are chosen. Helena closed the laptop slowly, her pulse steady. Someone had been paying attention after all, and they were close enough to know how carefully Emily lived. Chapter 6. The Record. Helena spread the papers across her dining table and stood over them without sitting. Emily's schedule, attendance logs, the annotated copy from the anonymous email. At first glance, everything aligned. Classes where they were supposed to be, lunch at the same time every day, dismissal logged within minutes, orderly, predictable. It was the margins that mattered. Helena compared the handwritten notes to the official schedule. Small deviations, 5 minutes early here, 10 minutes late there, a shift from one hallway to another. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would trigger concern on its own. but together they formed a second map. Not where Emily was meant to be, where she actually went. Helena replayed hallway footage again, slower this time. She stopped at moments she'd skimmed past before. Emily pausing at intersections, waiting for groups to clear, choosing longer routes. Avoidance, Helena thought, or timing. Her phone buzzed. Detective Walsh, you still think she stayed on campus? I think she wasn't in a hurry to leave, Helena typed back. Walsh responded almost immediately. We checked exits again. No confirmed sightings after fourth period. Helena stared at the screen. Then she went somewhere that didn't require leaving, she replied. Detective Walsh didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Helena returned to the school with permission to review additional records. The front office was quiet, staff moving with the careful politeness reserved for unresolved cases. She asked for sign-out logs, bathroom passes, anything that tracked movement without assuming intent. There aren't many, the secretary said apologetically. We trust students to manage themselves. Helena nodded. Trust left gaps. In a storage room near the guidance offices, Helena noticed a narrow corridor she hadn't walked before. It led to a set of doors marked faculty only. One stood slightly ajar. Inside, the lighting dimmed. Offices lined the hall, most empty. At the far end, a door bore a temporary sign taped crookedly to it. Wellness room. Helena knocked lightly. No answer. She opened the door. The room was small. 2 chairs, a low table, tissues stacked neatly, a lamp instead of overhead lights, designed to calm, not to question. A logbook sat on the table. Helena flipped through it. Names, dates, times. Most entries were brief. Students in distress, excused from class. A few names repeated. Emily's appeared twice, once 3 weeks before her disappearance, once the Thursday she vanished. Helena felt the faint pressure return behind her eyes. Not an image, not a voice, just confirmation. Emily hadn't skipped lunch. She'd been redirected. Helena photographed the pages and closed the book carefully, returning it exactly as she'd found it. Outside the room, footsteps echoed down the hall. A teacher passed without looking in, her attention already elsewhere. In the parking lot, Helena called Walsh. "There's a wellness room," she said. "Emily signed the day she disappeared." "That wasn't in the report," Walsh said. "It wouldn't be," Helena replied. "It's framed as support." Silence stretched on the line. "Does that make it suspicious?" Walsh asked finally. "No," Helena said. "It makes it invisible." She hung up and sat in her car, hands resting on the steering wheel. Emily had followed rules, sought permission, used designated spaces. She hadn't rebelled or run. She'd complied. Helena's instincts stirred, not as warning, but as grief, the kind that arrived when harm bore the language of care. Back home, Helena reviewed the logbook photos again. This time she noticed something else. The handwriting for Emily's entries was not the same. The first was neat, adolescent. The second, firmer, adult. Someone else had signed her out. Helena leaned back, the room suddenly too quiet. Not all routines are chosen, and not all records told the same story. She reached for her phone, already knowing what the next step would cost. Chapter 7. Authorized. The wellness coordinator's office was smaller than Helena expected. No window, one plant that looked real enough to be convincing, a row of motivational posters, "You're not alone," "Ask for help," carefully aligned so none of them crowded the others. The room felt designed to reassure people quickly and send them back out again. Mary Ann Cole sat behind the desk, hands folded, posture attentive, early 50s, calm in the practiced way of someone who had learned to absorb distress without letting it linger. "I understand you have some questions," Mary Ann said. "Yes," Helena replied, "about the wellness room." Mary Ann smiled politely. "Of course, we're proud of that space. It's helped a lot of students." "I'm sure it has," Helena said. "I noticed Emily Rowe's name in the logbook." Mary Ann's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Not alarm, not defensiveness, recognition. "She came in occasionally," Mary Ann said. "Nothing out of the ordinary." "Can you tell me about the last time?" Helena asked. Mary Ann glanced at her calendar, though there was nothing written on it. "She asked to step out of class, said she needed a quiet place." "Did she say why?" "No," Mary Ann shrugged gently. "We don't require details. It's meant to be a low-barrier option." "Of course," Helena said. "How long did she stay?" "About 15 minutes," Mary Ann said. "Maybe 20. "And then?" "And then she left." Helena waited. "To go back to class," Mary Ann added. "Did you see her leave?" Helena asked. Mary Ann hesitated. "I signed her out." "But you didn't escort her." "No, we trust students." Trust again. Helena leaned back slightly. "I noticed the handwriting in the logbook," she said. "The last entry wasn't hers." Mary Ann's smile tightened. "Sometimes staff assist if a student is distressed." "Was Emily distressed?" Mary Ann paused. "Not visibly." "Then why sign her out?" Mary Ann's fingers shifted against one another. "It's not unusual. Sometimes students ask for help filling things out." Helena nodded, though the answer didn't settle. "Where did Emily go after she left?" Helena asked. Mary Ann shook her head. "That's outside our scope." Outside the scope of care, Helena thought, was a broad place. They ended the conversation with polite finality. Helena thanked her and stepped back into the hallway, the door closing softly behind her. It wasn't suspicion she felt, just containment, the sense that each answer had been shaped to fit inside policy. Outside, Helena called Detective Walsh. "I spoke to the wellness coordinator," she said. "And?" Walsh asked. "She confirms Emily was there, signed out, no follow-up." "That still doesn't mean anything," Walsh said. "I know, but it means someone took responsibility for her movement and then let it go." Walsh sighed. "You think it's negligence?" "I think it's permission," Helena said. Later, Helena reviewed staff schedules, who was on duty that Thursday, who rotated through the wellness room. Nothing unusual, no red flags, just systems overlapping. That evening, Helena returned to Emily's neighborhood, not to the house, but to the streets around it. She parked and walked without a destination, letting routine reveal itself. At a crosswalk, she stopped beside a teenage boy scrolling on his phone. "Did you know Emily Rowe?" Helena asked. He glanced up. "Yeah, sort of." "From school?" "And around," he said. "She walked this way a lot." "Did you ever walk with her?" He shook his head. "She didn't like company." "Why not?" He shrugged. "She said it slowed her down." "Slowed her down from what?" Helena wondered. "Did you see her the day she disappeared?" Helena asked. He hesitated. "Maybe." "Maybe?" "She was standing over there." He pointed across the street toward a side road that didn't lead anywhere obvious. "Just standing. Waiting." "Yeah." He frowned. "But not like she expected someone." "Then how?" "Like she was waiting to be told something." Helena felt the faint pressure return, not sharp, not visual, just a sense of alignment clicking into place. She thanked him and walked on, the streetlights blinking on one by one. Back in her car, Helena reviewed the map she'd been sketching in her head for days now. School, wellness room, park, cafe, bus stop, side road. None of them were wrong places. They were permitted ones. Her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You're looking in the right places, just not at the right authority." Helena stared at the screen. Authority, she thought, didn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it came laminated, printed, signed, and everyone agreed not to question it. She put the phone down, the weight of the case shifting again, not toward an answer, but toward a threshold she could feel herself approaching. Whatever had happened to Emily had been allowed, and allowance, Helena knew, was harder to prove than force. Chapter 8. The Limit. The request came back denied. Helena read the email twice, even though the language was unmistakable. Privacy constraints, ongoing internal review, no further access at this time. She closed her laptop and let the quiet settle. Up until now, the case had moved with a kind of cooperative inertia. Doors opened, files appeared, people answered questions, because that was what people did when nothing seemed wrong. This was different. Limits meant proximity. She called Detective Walsh. "They won't release staff movement logs," she said, "not even anonymized." Walsh exhaled slowly. "They're circling." "Why now?" asked Helena. "They say you're drawing connections that aren't supported by evidence." Helena smiled faintly. "That's generous of them." "They're worried about liability," Walsh added, "which means someone else already is." After the call, Helena drove, not to the school, but to the district office. She didn't announce herself. She sat in the lobby with a coffee she didn't drink, watching people move in and out with practiced efficiency. Authority revealed itself in habits. A woman passed through twice in an hour, clipboard always tucked under one arm. A man in a blazer stopped to lower his voice every time he took a call. No urgency, no fear, just control. Helena left without speaking to anyone. That afternoon, Helena reviewed Emily's digital footprint again. Messages, app usage, search history. Nothing overt. No cries for help, no plans to disappear. What stood out was what wasn't there. Emily's phone stopped recording location data for 23 minutes on the day she vanished. Not off, not dead. Paused. Helena checked the timestamp. It aligned almost perfectly with the wellness room entry. A coincidence, Helena knew, was only a coincidence until it wasn't. She drove past the side road the boy had pointed out the night before. Narrow, residential, no sidewalk. It led toward a cluster of low administrative buildings she hadn't paid attention to yet. Facilities, storage, temporary classrooms, permitted spaces. Helena parked and walked. The buildings were quiet, their windows dark, but not abandoned. Motion lights flicked on as she passed, one after another, as if the place itself were waking reluctantly. At the far end of the lot, she noticed a camera mounted higher than the others, newer, its lens angled not toward the road, but inward. Monitoring, not security. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Careful. This is where they stop calling it concern. Helena typed back before she could stop herself. Who is they? 3 dots appeared, disappeared. No reply. As she turned back toward her car, Helena felt it, the subtle shift she'd learned not to ignore. Not a vision, not fear, recognition. Emily hadn't vanished into chaos. She'd passed through a narrow window of time where oversight became isolation, where care became procedure, where authority no longer required explanation. Back home, Helena laid everything out again. Maps, timestamps, names, silences. The pattern was no longer abstract. It's had edges now. She realized something else then, something she hadn't allowed herself to consider before. No one had reported Emily missing immediately. Not the school, not the systems designed to track her. The delay hadn't been neglect, it had been assumption. Helena closed her notebook, pulse steady. Whatever happened next would force someone to step outside their role, and roles, she knew, were what this case had been built on. Her phone rang. Detective Walsh. "They've scheduled a meeting," he said, "tomorrow morning, district level." Helena didn't ask why. She already knew. When systems stopped cooperating quietly, they defended themselves formally, and that was when the real damage tended to surface. She ended the call and stood by the window, looking out at a street that appeared unchanged. Emily had lived inside that illusion her whole life. Tomorrow, Helena would have to decide how much of it she was willing to break. Chapter 9. What was allowed? The conference room was too bright. Alina noticed that first. The overhead lights humming faintly, the polished table reflecting faces back at themselves. Everyone had arrived early. Everyone had papers in front of them. It was the kind of preparedness that came from knowing the conversation would matter. 3 people sat across from her, a district administrator, legal counsel, and Marianne Cole from the wellness office. Detective Walsh took the seat beside Helena, close enough to signal alignment, far enough to maintain procedure. "We want to be clear," the administrator began, hands folded. "There is no evidence of wrongdoing." Helena nodded. "I'm not here to accuse anyone of a crime." The lawyer's gaze sharpened slightly. "I'm here," Helena continued, "to understand what happened during the 23 minutes Emily Rowe stopped existing on paper." Silence followed. Not shock, calculation. Marianne shifted in her chair. "Emily used the wellness room appropriately," she said. "She was distressed. She asked for space. And she was given it," Helena said. "Then she was signed out." "Yes, by you," Helena said calmly. Marianne inhaled. "That's standard practice." Helena slid a photograph across the table, a still frame from a security camera, time-stamped, grainy, unremarkable. "This is the side corridor behind the wellness room. Emily entered it at 12:19. She didn't leave through any recorded exit." The administrator frowned. "Those cameras don't capture." "I know," Helena said. "They weren't meant to." She laid out the annotated schedule next, Emily's handwriting in the margins, small adjustments, careful timing. She altered her movements for weeks, avoided busy intersections, waited for quieter windows. She wasn't hiding, she was complying. "With what?" the lawyer asked. Helena paused. "Emily believed she was responsible for managing her distress on her own," she said. "She followed every rule she'd been taught. When those rules didn't fit, she looked for approved alternatives." The administrator leaned forward. "Are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting," Helena said gently, "that Emily went somewhere she believed she was allowed to be, somewhere designed for privacy, not supervision, somewhere no one would question her presence." Marianne's voice shook. "We never told her to go anywhere." Helena met her gaze. "You told her she was trusted." The room tightened. Walsh spoke then. "We found the maintenance access door behind the wellness corridor. It leads to the temporary facilities wing." The administrator stiffened. "That area isn't open to students." "It wasn't locked," Walsh said. Helena continued, her voice steady. "Emily followed a routine that made sense to her. She went where adults had shown her was acceptable when she needed space, quiet, controlled, unobserved." "And then?" the lawyer asked. Helena felt the familiar weight, the point where instinct had to give way to what could be demonstrated. "And then," she said, "Emily was alone longer than her body could tolerate." No one spoke. "She experienced a medical event. There was no alert system, no check-in protocol, no expectation that someone would follow up." They didn't argue that. because they couldn't. Later, much later, Helena stood outside the temporary building, the air sharp with cold. Forensics moved in measured patterns behind the tape perimeter, not hurried, not noticeable. Emily had been found in a storage room used for archived materials. No signs of struggle, no note. She hadn't run, she hadn't fought, she had waited. The official cause would be ruled an accidental death, a medical event compounded by isolation, no criminal charges, no single point of blame. Helena watched as evidence bags were sealed, labelled, catalogued. Allowed, she thought again, did not mean intended. Walsh joined her, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. They'll say it was unforeseeable. They always do, Helena replied. They'll update procedures, he said. Add locks, change language. Helena nodded. After. Across the lot, Emily's parents arrived, escorted quietly. Their faces were pale, stunned, not defensive, not guilty, just devastated. Helena didn't approach them. This wasn't a truth that landed all at once. It would come in waves, in hindsight, in questions that had no one place to go. As the lights inside the building dimmed, Helena felt something ease, not relief, but resolution. The story people wanted was simpler, a runaway, a mistake, a failure of attention. The truth was harder. Emily hadn't been unseen. She had been seen and processed, and that, Helena knew, was sometimes the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 10. After. The town didn't change. Helena noticed that most in the days that followed. The streets stayed orderly, lawns were trimmed, the cafe opened on time, the bell chiming as if nothing had shifted beneath it. At the school, classes resumed. A new banner went up near the main entrance. If you're struggling, reach out. It hung straight. Emily Rowe's name appeared once more in the paper, brief, careful. The language favoured gentleness over specificity. An accident, a tragic loss, a reminder to look out for one another. No mention of time gaps, or locked doors, or the way permission could feel like safety until it wasn't. Helena didn't attend the memorial. She drove past the school instead, slowing near the side road that led nowhere obvious. The lights flicked on again as her car passed, illuminating empty pavement. They'd already replaced the locks. At the precinct, Detective Walsh handed her a thin folder. "Final report," he said. "No charges." She took it without opening it. There never were going to be. They're calling it a systems failure, reviewing protocols, training. Systems don't fail, Helena said quietly. They do what they're built to do. Walsh watched her for a moment. "You're staying in town?" "Not long." That night, Helena packed slowly. She folded clothes she hadn't worn, returned borrowed files, erased whiteboards that had once been crowded with arrows and notes. On her desk lay the copied schedule, the one with the margin notes. She studied it one last time. The careful adjustments, the compliance disguised as choice. Emily had believed the rules would keep her safe. Helena slipped the paper into a folder she didn't label. As she turned off the lights, her phone buzzed. No number, just a message. "Thank you for seeing her." Helena didn't reply. Outside, the air was cold and still. She stood for a moment before getting into her car, letting the quiet settle the way she'd learned to do years ago, acknowledging it without mistaking it for peace. Some truths didn't bring justice, they brought responsibility, and responsibility, once named, had a way of lingering. Helena drove out of town before dawn, the road empty ahead of her. Behind her the systems adjusted, and somewhere between intention and outcome, a girl who had followed every rule was finally allowed to rest. End of chapter and end of story. Please like and subscribe to our channel and to listen to more free audiobooks.